Hey everybody! Oh my gosh, that's bright. Oh, there it goes. Um, and happy Independence Day. Happy 4th of July. Happy Fireworks Day, however you refer to it. I said that this channel was going to go active again. And what better day to start talking about things than Independence Day? While I know that we're celebrating our independence from England, from Great Britain, from the beginning of a democracy, of the right everyone has to have a voice, whether we exercise that right or not. That's part of what I'm trying to do, is bring a voice to those who haven't had one. It's been out there. Be the change you want to see in the world. So that's what I'm doing. That's the point of this channel now, is to be the change I want to see in the world. And a part of that change is to bring awareness and understanding for those who are going through abuse. I was recently in a conversation on Facebook where we were talking about what exactly constitutes abuse. And it goes past what most people think. I learned a lot. It goes past somebody hitting someone. I can honestly say my ex never hit me. I have been hit, but not by my ex, and it has only happened once. I am that kind of a girl. If you hit me once, it's never going to happen again. So, what I didn't realize is that there are other types of abuse. There's emotional abuse. There is mental abuse, mind games. There's something called gaslighting, where something happens, and then when you turn around to recount the details, your abuser begins changing the details to make themselves look better, or just to alter the outcome, so that you start doubting your own version of reality. How do I know that happened? They're saying this happened. And it plays mental games with you, and it's so scary. There's financial abuse. One of the hardest things for me to admit. The first year I was with him, I gave my ex $10,000. And a lot of people are looking at it going, you dummy. And believe me, I know. Now I know. Back then, his interest in me was waning. I couldn't keep his attention anymore. But he was having a hard time paying the bills. And if I gave him money, then suddenly I was, we were back in the honeymoon phase. As some of the other girls and I have come to refer to it as, I was the new toy again. That explains a little bit. A kid with a new toy and they're so excited right up until the next new toy is offered to them, even if it's just 5 minutes later. Abusers are often like that as well. There is childhood abuse, obviously. There's sexual abuse. But things I have never thought of as abuse. I was bullied growing up. Obviously I'm overweight. I'm very tall. I'm 6 foot. I have glasses. I loved school. And these things made me ripe for bullies to pick on. I said that I wanted to bring a voice to those who don't have one. That 9-year-old girl, that 7-year-old girl, when it all started, didn't have the voice, the courage to stand up and say something. And I don't fault her in the slightest. I have learned so much 25 years away from that 7-year-old girl. And I am such a different person now than I was back then. And I'm grateful to her because her quiet strength, her inability to stop smiling and to stop trying to be friends even with the bullies, gave me a core of strength that I don't think I could have survived without. So, as much as people talk about being insensitive and hey, I went through bullying as a kid, the kids are being too sensitive these days. No one should have to put up with that. It is a form of abuse. You don't one of the big things in our culture right now, you don't look at a victim of abuse and say it's their fault. Why would you look at a kid and tell them to be quiet when someone's hurting them? It is emotional and mental abuse. The next form of abuse that I went through was in college. I had a friend, all I can think is he had a mental break. It was a very small incident. I interrupted a phone call between him and his girlfriend, and it set him off. And the next thing I know, he was a member of interning with the IT department on campus. And he was printing threats through the network off my printer. He had hacked into my computer because I'd had him remove a virus from it a couple weeks earlier to get into my MySpace, which really dates me. For anybody younger than my generation watching this, MySpace was Facebook before Facebook. And you could enter journal entries. And I had a number of public journal entries, but then I took my private moments, and it was the only safe place, it was the only place I could transfer across that I had. So I had very private journal entries on there, and he erased my entire public journal and published my private entries, including some very dark, very depressed moments. He began emailing people under my accounts, telling them I hated them, trying to end my friendships. It was an unending onslaught of abuse. It really was. It was abuse. And it's taken me a while, sorry, I have to shift, to realize that that's what it was. And I think all of it can be characterized by one statement. He looked at a mutual friend of ours when they asked him what he thought he was doing. It's Laura, she'll forgive me. Laura never holds grudges. Laura will forget by this time next week. And in some ways he's right. I did forgive him. I did not forget. As an abuse victim, it is impossible to forget, no matter how hard you try. I went home. My family dealt with the depression that followed, and I moved out on my own with some friends, and I don't know if it had always been there or if it was a product of some of this stuff. Sorry, I'm trying to shift. But I became a very codependent individual. And that codependency led me to my ex. My friends had pretty much disappeared. One into a very intense relationship with a man she eventually married. Another into the realization that he was gay. The last into a relationship with an abuser. I did not know at the time he was an abuser. And I met my ex, and I was falling to pieces. I didn't have my friends. I was working 48, sometimes 55 hours a week, trying to keep up managing a store when my boss didn't ever want me to go home. 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day. Except for Sundays. Sundays we opened at 10 and we closed at 6. But, it was too much. And it was more than I could handle. And I met my ex, and he swooped in with this group of friends, and I was so lonely. And then the male of the 4 roommates, there were 3 girls and 1 guy, who was actually my foster brother. And we get along a lot better these days. We've moved past all of that, so you'll probably hear me reference him occasionally. He knew there was something off. He knew there was something wrong. But I was so lonely I couldn't see it, and I didn't want to see it. And we fought. And my ex was there to rescue me. He was there with friends who wanted to hug me and tell me it was okay to cry. And that love I so desperately needed, he held out. These days, I refer to what happened with him as a cult. And I say that because I am a Christian. The idea of a polyamorous relationship is not something I ever would have entertained. He was the abuser that my roommate was dating. And what he would do was he wouldn't let you realize what was going on until he'd hooked you. Abuse is in a lot of ways like a drug. People wonder why you don't get away from an abuser. Once you know they're an abuser, why don't you leave? It's not that simple. Work in an addiction clinic, and people come into us and they have to want to change. And once they want to change, we give them a prescription for a medication that allows them to step down off of whatever substance they're addicted to so that they don't go through withdrawal. There is no substance for abuse. There is no... When you leave an abusive relationship, there is a part of your brain that believes your abuser loves you. It may not be good attention, but it's attention. And they wouldn't lash out at you leaving if they didn't care, right? And I'm not saying I think these things are true anymore, but I want people who haven't been through it to understand what is going through the mind of an abuse victim. So you leave. Or you try to leave. And nobody wants you to talk about it because they don't want to hear how hurt you were. They don't want to hear what you went through. They can't handle hearing it. And they're not prepared for the emotional vacuum that you feel. They're not prepared for the tears and the PTSD. I mean, speaking on Independence Day, our soldiers come home, and it's taken us how many years to realize exactly how harmful PTSD is to them? I know a number of soldiers who suffer from PTSD. I'm friends with quite a few, and we still are never going to understand exactly. They take every precaution they can. In some ways, I think it's cruel to set off fireworks on the 4th of July because of how many people it affects. Especially soldiers. They fought for our freedom, they fight for our freedom, and we bring them home and celebrate their sacrifice for us by putting them into anxiety attacks. Not to say that I dislike fireworks. I love fireworks. I love sparkly shinies in the sky, as long as they are a far enough distance away that the boom doesn't cause me to go into an anxiety attack. So... my ex programmed the people he was with. It took years for me to not hear his voice in my head telling me that I belonged to him. It was a repetition. Tell me you belong to me, baby. I love you so much. Tell me you belong to me. I belong to you. You always belong to me. Yes, I always belong to you. And I know that's not true now. But it's hard. I still have nightmares where he says those words and I wake up shaking. I don't repeat them back to him, not even in dreams anymore. But I wake up shaking, and the only thing scarier would be to see him again. He had a child, 6 months old, born the day before my birthday, who I met him the first time. And as much as I tell myself I think I would have gotten out sooner if not for that little boy, that's probably a lie. Because I got out for that little boy. Once we waded through the lies and everything else, his mama and I became best friends. They're actually coming to visit this Friday, and I get to keep my boy for a whole week. Heaven help me. we watched his daddy start to behave that way in front of him, and him picking up some of the attitudes. And it was in March, I think, February or March, I think, of 2010, that we decided it was time to get out. We both had family in other states at that point. My family moved to Indiana. Her mother lived in north of us, Michigan. And we were going to get a house together, and she was going to go to school, and I was going to work part-time, and she was going to work part-time, and I was going to stay home most of the time and take care of baby boy. That didn't work out. I wound up staying in Indiana, and I don't mind that in the slightest. I've made a home here. I have people I care about here. I have friends here, and I wouldn't trade any of them for the world. I'm still close enough to my best friend and my munchkin. I call her my soul sister. She's one of 4 people that I have that are my soul sisters. Another one lives in the house with me, and you may get to see her eventually. She moved from Missouri to help take care of me now that I'm going through some of the chronic illness stuff. Which is an incredible thing to have someone do for you. But this is getting long, so I probably better get to wrapping it up. That's getting out. I was planning on visiting my family anyway. My dad was going to come pick me up his birthday weekend. And instead of coming to pick me up to visit for a week, by the time he got there, my whole apartment had been packed up with the help of 2 friends. Baby boy's mama and the person sitting across the room from me. We had in less than 3 days, we'd packed up my entire life. We loaded it into a U-Haul, and I left. We changed my phone number on the road, and I fell apart. And I mean, I'll go into some of that later. It's a day for celebration, which is really what this is about. This is about starting to give a voice, because it's Independence Day, this celebration of the revolution. Giving a voice to those who don't speak. And my story is not like anybody else's story. Nobody else's story is like my story. Every situation is unique. As unique as the fingerprints of the person that went through it. And every single one deserves a voice. Now, they may not want their fingerprint out there. But they're a part of my voice. Because none of us went through it alone. We may have been alone at the time, but we are not alone. If you're watching this and you've been through abuse, you are not alone. We're out there. Look for Centers for Nonviolence. Look for support groups. Call your local YWCA. There are places you can talk to people. There's a national hotline, and they are very, they won't call you back if it's not safe. They'll help you find places. They are conscientious about the fact that you may be in danger. I've been there. And there is always a way out. And you may not take that step for you. I took that step 2010 March for a 3.5-year-old little boy who called me boss and said that I lived in an office building because I was the boss of the office building on the top floor of an apartment building, but apparently made me the boss of the office building. I couldn't have gotten out for me. And even when I did, I'd go to visit friends in Missouri, and because a lot of our friends were mutual friends, I would wind up getting hooked back in. And again, that's a story for another time. I have not spoken to him in, I believe, since summer 2011. Though I officially count April 24th of 2010 as the day I got away, because that's when the break started. That's when I really started pulling away. That's my Independence Day. April 24th, 2010, and I celebrate it every year. It's an important day for me because it's the day I started finding Laura again. And I swear 4 minutes ago I said I was going to wrap this up. That is my story. That is my story up until moving to Fort Wayne. And like I said, I'll go into some more of the details and various things later. Anybody who'd like to message me, or if you have questions you want me to answer, I will definitely do some of that at the beginning of each of these videos. So feel free to leave comments. I'd love to see them. I will be linking this to my Facebook page. I fully believe if you're going to advocate for something, you need to be open. So, hi guys, Laura Hayes. I am a survivor of abuse. It is possible. And in some ways, everybody is. So, we are not alone. You are not alone. You are loved. I may not know your name. Probably don't know your name. But you are loved. Because I will not stay silent while others are being hurt. Because I may not have met you, but I love you because I know what you're going through. And I won't leave you alone. So celebrate the 4th of July and secretly celebrate your independence. My glasses are falling again. Celebrate your independence because whether you're free yet or not, if you're watching this and you're in abuse, you're on your way. If you're watching this and you know someone who's being abused, you're starting to learn how to help them. And even if you're just watching this and learning, you're helping give a voice to those who have had none. So, happy 4th of July, everybody. My love to all of you. Have a great day. Stay safe. Don't blow yourselves up.